By model of the neurological spectrum, I have already explained that we are all on a spectrum between individual and collective identity, that autistic people can be found at the far individual end of that spectrum. A newborn child is already aware of their self, and initially they identify themselves as an individual and others as other individuals, and therefore as equals, no matter how different the other person may be. However, from the moment they are born, their individual identity is sabotaged by societies and, in most cases, their parents' de-individuation or efforts by getting them, to a greater or lesser degree, to take on the identities of the groups they belong to, such as ethnicity, nationality, and social class, and those they are brought into, such as religion and culture, and which are presented to them with at least a slight sense of superiority. Furthermore, children are expected to learn decoding and fulfilling all the social expectations of those groups. The most obvious category to identify with, at least in multiracial environments, is ethnicity. And while newborn children don't have a racial preference, 3-month-old infants already prefer the company of their own race. And developing a sense of us also means developing a sense of them. In the early years, children learn to identify with physically discernible groups, such as ethnicity, and the older they get, the more they identify with abstract groups, such as nationality. And while younger children tend to unconditionally favor in-group members, older children already begin to discriminate against group members who fail to conform. Traditional fairy tales, as well as religious beliefs, assist in suppressing children's individual identities by decreasing their self-esteem, introducing them to stereotypes, instilling fear of the unknown and the dread of supernatural punishment, and teaching total obedience over critical thinking and conformity over individual expression. Public education plays the most vital role in this de-individuation process. Education systems worldwide, with the exception of very few institutions, enforce conformity and extinguish critical thinking in order to turn children into unquestioning subjects of their respective political systems. Taught to suppress their own thoughts and ideas, the children's ability to think creatively declines rapidly, from 98% of 3 to 5-year-old children scoring a genius level to 30% of 10-year-old ones, 12% of 15-year-old ones, and 2% of adults, according to a long-term study. Ironically, after they leave the educational system, creativity is the main criterion a potential employer will be looking for. Most children, to varying degrees, manage the gradual transformation from individual to collective identity. But there will always be children who are unwilling to let go of their individual identities. In general, as they grow older, children undergo a neurological process known as synaptic pruning. And over the years, roughly half of their synapses disappear as a result of inactivity, since they are not relevant to their collective identities. However, this process does not occur in de-individuation resistors who hold on to most of their synapses, which can cause reduced habituation and sensory overload, but also explains their ability to logically connect facts, information and observations that appear unrelated to others, connecting the dots on different sheets, as I call it. Interestingly, people who haven't been subjected to de-individuation attempts in the first place, such as hippie children, tend to develop profiles similar to those of autistic people. How these children fare depends a lot on the environment and the parenting style. A child like this growing up in a liberal society, with parents who practice gentle parenting and tolerate or even encourage individual expression, will usually thrive. The same child, growing up in a conservative environment, revolving around collective identities and with strict authoritarian parents, will face a constant struggle by having to fight demands to conform and give up their personality, and therefore they are most likely to receive an autism diagnosis. Society and many parents try to break autistic children by demanding the display of certain behaviors and the suppression of others. This can take the form of authoritarian structures or parenting, or behavioral conversion therapies such as ABA. There are three possible outcomes to these attempts. 1. The child is successfully broken, suppresses their autistic identity, and copies the behaviors and opinions of others in order to achieve acceptance. This comes at the cost of their mental and physical health, as well as their intellectual potential. 2. The child refuses to denounce their identity and defends it vehemently and sometimes violently. 3. The child mentally withdraws from a world refusing to accept them for who they are. If your child resists deindividuation and holds on to their individual identity, let them. They are not broken. On the contrary, human progress is the result of individuals who don't go with the crowd, who don't just follow orders, and who are able to think originally. Throughout history, those who changed the world for the better lived through a lifetime of struggle, opposition, and discrimination for their refusal to conform. It is time to make it easier for them. Let's begin with their childhoods. Thank you.